In August 1914, people greeted outbreaks of hostile enthusiastically. Everyday ordinary people believed that their nations had the right to defend themselves against foreign aggression. Competent countries experienced a desperate need for men and weapons. To prevent war, national leaders aggressively intervened in society and the economy. In the late 19th century, the national state has shown an eagerness to manage the welfare of its citizens. Each competent state established new governments to mobilize soldiers. Government's planning boards set mandatory production goals and set limits on wages and prices. Germany went farthest into developing a planned economy to wage total war, but Germany failed to tax the war profits of private firms heavily enough. This led to massive deficit financing, inflation, the growth of a black market, and the re-emergence of class conflict. Germany military leaders forced the Reichstag to accept the auxiliary service law, requiring males between 17 and 60 years old to work at jobs considered critical to war efforts. Women worked in war factories, mines, and steel mills. After 1917, German leaders ruled by dictatorial decree.
The social impact was not as profound as the economic impact. National conscription sent millions of men to the front, which in turn exposed foreign lands. The crazy demands of the military created a demand of workers, increasing the amount of jobs. The need for workers meant greater power and prestige for labor unions. The role of women changed dramatically. In various countries, a large number of women left home to work. They worked in the industry, transportation, and offices. The production of ammunition required a huge amount of laborers.
The war expanded the range of women's activities and helped change the attitudes about gender, but the long-term results were mixed. Women did gain job experiences that were usually reserved for men, and due to their contributions in the war, many countries such as Britain, Germany, Poland, and the US gave women the right to vote immediately after the war. After the war, though, many of the demobilized soldiers demanded their jobs back, and government forced women out of the workplace. Though the unemployment was temporary, the women's rights movement faded in the 1920s and 1930s, largely due to the fact that feminists could not regain momentum after the crisis of war. To some extent, the war promoted greater social equality and blurred class distinctions and lessened the gap between rich and poor, and this was most apparent in Great Britain. During the first 2 years of the war, soldiers and civilians supported their government, which used crude propaganda and censorship to promote popular beliefs such as patriotic nationalism. Despite their efforts, by 1916, people were beginning to crack under the strain of total war. In 1916, Irish nationalists revolted against British rule in the Eastern Rebellion, though after a week of fighting, the rebels were caught and their leader executed. On all sides of the war, the soldiers' morale began to decline. Many units would refuse to fight due to exhaustion, wretched conditions in the field, and the ever-growing hopelessness they felt every day. The Allies in the war were about to collapse in despair until the US promised fresh troops, which stiffened their resolve.
Germans suffered tremendously from war. British ships blocked the importation of food and causing 750,000 Germans to starve to death. The scarcity of supplies undermined people's morale. The Reichstag called for a peace without annexations or reparations, an unthinkable compromise. Just like Austria-Hungary, Germany was beginning to crack. However, it was Russia that was the first to collapse.